All right. So once again, good morning to everybody. And at this time, we shall be studying values formation in you. This is the second lesson under unit number 4. Okay. The first lesson was on foundational moral principles, and the second lesson will be this values formation. Well, they are related with each other. Okay, they are related with each other. When we talk about morality, okay, we're knowing teachers has to know what's good and what is bad, should avoid evil, and should always do what is good. Okay, what is right. Okay, what is right, and knowing what is right. Okay, knowing what is right is also based on what particular values have formed towards us. Okay, what particular values have been formed in us as a human person. Okay, as a human person. Well, it is important for us to understand our value systems, our beliefs, okay, because the way we operate in this world, okay, the way we act in this world is guided by what we think is important in our community, what we think is of essential or of essence in our community. So what do we feel towards something? Okay, so we are guided with our values. Okay, in fact, education or particularly schooling plays a very important role. Okay, in forming values not only within ourselves as teachers, but to our students. Okay, to our students as Father Ranilio Aquino had mentioned, sabi niya, education in values means the cultivation of effectivity, leading the educand through exposure to an experience of value and of the valuable. Okay, so we are immersing ourselves as teachers and as students in an educational setup, okay, to experience values, okay, to experience and then for us to be able to identify our value systems and beliefs and to harness that value while we are immersed on that particular setup. Okay, so uh, relating our current topic to our previous lesson, we have mentioned that to be moral is to be human. In fact, when we define morality, okay, morality is any action that does not go against the nature of man. Okay, because if we act against the nature of man, then we cannot be categorized as a human being because we're not behaving like a human being. Okay, for example, if you see a person or couple could be male or female or both sexes, okay, mating in public places. Okay, mating in a national highway, for example, is that an action that is within the bounds of becoming a human being, diba? So that's not actually human in nature, okay? That behavior is not human in nature. So that's what we mean. That is what we mean by morality. Morality is guided by the nature of man, okay? The actions that are within the nature of man, and we don't go down the level of animals or lowest a lower form of animals. Although we are animals scientifically, but biologically we are categorized under kingdom animalia, but we belong to the highest, or in fact we are the highest form of animals, and we don't go down the level of animals at the lower strata because they don't have the ability to think, they don't have the ability to make choices and to feel the right and appropriate emotions and behavior in a particular context, which humans can only do. Okay, so furthermore, living with the right values, okay, living by the right values actually makes us more of a human being. Okay, imagine if you are with someone who does not have any values at all, right? Say they don't value cleanliness, they don't value kindness, they don't value love and care. So imagine if you are with someone who does not value those kind of values, diba? You cannot live with that kind of person, okay? Because how can you call someone a person if he or she does not have that right values? Because as we have mentioned, right values humanizes. So try to examine yourself now, okay? Try to examine yourself. What are the values that you treasure? Okay, what values have you learned in school, and what values have you learned too from your experiences outside the school? Okay, outside the school. Anong pinaniniwalaan mo? Anong binibigyan mo ng halaga? Okay? Well, talking about values, okay? Meron ba tayong mga values na tama? Ano nga ba yung mga values na tama? Ano yung mga values na hindi nagbabago? At ano yung mga values na, of course, kahit saan ka mapunta, tingin nila importante itong value na ito. Okay? So there are two points of views regarding this. No? The first one is an idealist point of view. Okay, an idealist point of view. When we talk about the idealist point of view, it believes that there are unchanging and universal values. Okay, there are unchanging and universal values. When we mean unchanging, hindi nagbabago. When we mean universal, it means that it is always true whether where you are, regardless of where you are or what time you have. Okay, so unchanging in the sense that this particular value is is uh, constant. It eternal in a sense because what is true today, or what is true to that value 50 or 500 years ago, it still goes through until today and in the future. Okay, in the future. Okay, for example, the values of love, care, and concern are values for all people, regardless of time and space, right? Whether you are Japanese, whether you are Chinese, or whatever nationality you have, you know what love is. We know what love is, di ba? You don't want to sing I want to know what love is, because even if you have not experienced love in a romantic way, you know what love is. You know what love is. And there are many faces of love. And whether where you are, okay, nasa Pilipinas ka man o nasa ibang bansa ka, love as a value is universal. Okay, love as a value is universal. Now, how can someone from another country love another person from another country? Because of love. And love is universal. Whether where you are, you know what love means. Okay? Care, pag-aalaga, and concern. Those are universal values that is not affected by time and it's not affected by space. The kind of love we have today can also be the kind of love that has been expressed by people millions or thousands of years ago. Okay? Thousands of years ago. Yun yung tinatawag nating universal values. And the idea of, or the ideology of the idealist point of view is that these values are universal. Okay, they are unchanging. Okay. Furthermore, aside from calling them universal and unchanging values, they are also called transcendent values. Okay, they are also called transcendent values. So they remain to be a value even if no one values them. It's always there. Okay, kumbaga, it's always there. Like even if you don't see the sun right now, the sun is always there. Okay, the sun will always be there. Even if you don't see the moon in the morning, the moon will always be there. So like love, okay, even if you don't feel love, love is always around us. Okay, love is always around us. You can see love from the relationship of fathers to their children, from mothers to their children, or from a family, or maybe from a neighbor to another neighbor. Love is all around us. Okay, the way you care for other people is an expression of love. Okay, so those are the explanations of what value is in an idealist point of view. Now let's talk about another point of view, which is opposite to the idealist point of view, which is relativist point of view. Okay, now what do you mean by the relativist point of view? Now, if an idealist point of view, love is universal, in a relativist point of view, it claims that there are no universal and unchanging values. In other words, ang values ay nagbabago. Okay? Ang values ay nagbabago. Ang values ay hindi rin magkaparehas o ang tawag dito, magkatulad sa lahat ng panahon at sa lahat ng lugar. So nagbabago ang values depende sa panahon at depende kung nasaang lugar ka. Okay? So the values that our forefathers believed in are not necessarily the right values for the present. Right? That's a very good example, no? Maraming mga nagrereklamo, maraming nagtataka, bakit ang mga magulang natin ay iba ang ugali kesa sa mga anak nila. Okay? Kesa sa present generation. Well, because they lived in a different time and the values on those times are very different from each other. Okay? For example, family time, okay, as a value. Family time as a value. Before, it is very important for a family to go to eat together, to pray together, and to spend time together, right? They eat together, so they always call each other to gather around the table so that they can eat together and spend family time together. But these times, okay, there are certain families, and not because their fathers or mothers have changed, but because the values that their children have put into family time is not as much as what their parents did during their time. Okay, during their time. So because of many factors like technology, yung cellphone, yung laptop nila, internet, so they value these things more than spending time with their families. That's what we mean by this one, that values are changing. Values are dependent on time too, and on place. Okay. For example, let's talk about the value of nationalism. Let's talk about the value of nationalism, or of being patriotic, Now, can you feel that the people nowadays, or the young generation nowadays, value nationalism? Diba? If we compare how people value nationalism and patriotism during the revolution days, during the times of the Spanish occupation in the country versus now, it's very different. Okay? People before are willing to die for the nation. That's how they can manifest their value towards nationalism. They're willing to fight for the nation. But today, who goes to the West Philippine Sea, right? Even our government is complacent in protecting our lands in the West Philippine Sea. So you can see there that there's not DDS. Again, I'm not, disclaimer, I'm not a DDS nor a Dilawan, but I'm observant. Okay, I'm observant, of course. I'm critical too. But yung sinasabi natin that the way we perceive, or the way we look at the importance of a certain value has changed depending on our situations. Okay, so yung mga ganyan. Right, so that is what we mean by the relativist point of view. Some values are not universal because these values are dependent on time and, of course, of the place. Okay, so another example, what the British consider as values are not necessarily considered values by the Filipinos. Okay, what are unique Filipino values? Halimbawa, yung utang na loob. Utang na loob. You know, in other countries, they don't have that. Right? I don't owe you something. I deserve this and I don't owe you something. But in the Philippines, even if you deserve this, okay, meron pa rin tayong tinatawag na utang na loob. Halimbawa, pumasok ka sa isang organisasyon, sa gobyerno, nabigyan ka ng item. So you have undergone the correct process, the procedure. You have undergone the procedure. But because someone has approved your item, someone has approved your position, people think that you owe something to that guy or to that gal who have approved your position, who have signed your appointment paper. But in fact, no, you don't owe anything to that person. You owe it to yourself because you did a good job. You did a great job. Your credentials are outstanding. And that's why they have given you the position. And not because someone has signed that paper that tells you that you are already permanent in the position. Okay? So, tayo mga Pilipino, likas sa atin yung utang na loob na kahit hindi naman talaga siya akma sa sitwasyon, we still give that a person or an individual or an organization something because you think that it's there and they are the reason why you are actually there. Pero hindi, di ba? Hindi maganda. In some cases, marami kasi sa wala kang utang na loob, ibig sabihin masama kang tao, pero hindi eh. Hindi sa lahat ng pagkakataon, hindi sa lahat ng sitwasyon ay pwede nating i-apply yung utang na loob mentality ng mga Pilipino. Although sometimes it's good. Okay? Another is hospitability. Being hospitable is a value of the Filipino people. They value that, no? Yung pagiging welcoming sa mga bisita, tulad ng tayo mga Pilipino, pag may Amerikanong pupunta sa bansa natin, we adjust to them. Even if we don't speak English fluently, we go and speak English to them. But in other countries, they don't do that. If you go to Japan, you have to learn their language. You have to learn their language. They won't adjust to you. Okay? Like for example, in our case, pag tayo, napaka-hospitable ng mga Pilipino eh, di ba? I don't know if kami lang or sa ibang bahay, pero sa inyo din siguro, pagka may bisita, lahat ng magagandang gamit nilalabas. Right? Traditionally, meron tayong mga pinggan na magaganda, yung babasagin, pag may bisita, saka mo lang ilalabas yan. Pero pag alis ng mga bisita, okay, at kayo na lang niya nasa bahay, yung pamilya mismo yung nasa bahay, balik kayo dun sa lata na nangangalawang na nga, o kaya yung stainless na baso, or what not. So doon natin na ipapakita yung pagiging hospitable natin to the point that we're compromising also our quality of lifestyle. So we think like, you know, because they are visitors, we have to give them specials. Sometimes, in some cases, hindi tama yung mga ginagawa din natin. So yun yung mga values ng mga Pilipino. Alright? So talking about values, okay, are values taught and caught? Are values taught or caught? Ito ba ay naituturo o ito ba ay natututunan ng mga bata mula sa interaction nila sa kanilang environment? No, many would say that it's more of a caught thing. Values are caught, okay? Because people live in a certain community and they're exposed to different environment, and from those environment they get to know what values should they have. But in other references, of course, values are taught. But if you would ask me, values are both thought and caught. Okay? Both. They are both thought and caught. Itinuturo ito at ito ay natututunan mo rin mula sa interaction mo sa iyong environment. In fact, sabi dito, no, the examples of good men and women at home, school and society have far more greater influence on our values formation than values lectures delivered by experts. Let me ask you, did you learn values from values education? Di ba, meron tayong subject noon ng elementary, high school, GMRC, good manners and right conduct, and values education. But how many % have you still remembered in those particular subjects? Right? Anong mga natutunan mo? At anong mga tumatak sa'yo sa subject mo na GMRC at values ed? If you would ask me, parang wala. Parang 5% lang yata natatandaan ko. Kasi natatandaan ko lang yung mga tanong ni teacher na nakakita ka ng balat ng candy sa daan. Anong gagawin mo? Ang sagot syempre pupulutin mo. Kailangan mo bang itanong sa sarili mo kung anong gagawin mo pag nakakita ka ng balat ng candy? O halimbawa, nakakita ka ng pera na nahulog. Anong gagawin mo? O syempre ibabalik mo. Pero yung sinasabi natin that there are problems that are existing with how we educate our children with values. Okay? And there are many factors alongside naman kasi. Okay, for example, you're teaching honesty to your students. Like, be honest at all times. Honesty is the best policy. Nakalagay pa nga yan sa classroom, yung nakapost sa taas ng blackboard. Honesty is the best policy. And we always teach our students, be honest, huwag kang magsisinungaling, bawal ang magsinungaling. Pero pagdating nila sa bahay, it's the opposite. Like, they will experience confusion. Di ba? May kumatok dun sa bahay, Bombay. Tapos pupunta ka sa mama yung Bombay. Sabihin mo, wala ako. Is that teaching your children honesty? And ano magagawa ng bata? Siyempre, sasabihin niya, wala yung mama niya. So, this kind of experiences of our children are opposing each other to the point that the child is put in a situation na hindi niya na alam kung anong gagawin niya. So kailangan nating maging mapanuri, okay? Gawing consistent tayo sa mga itinuturo natin sa ating mga estudyante. Okay? So there are 3 dimensions of values. In fact, it starts with the cognitive dimension. And then it also has an affective dimension, and the last one is a behavioral dimension. So as teachers, we have to understand this too. Okay? Gusto mo maging mabait, pero hindi mo naman alam kung ano nga ba ang tunay na kabaitan, halimbawa. Okay? For example, ng 3 dimensions natin, yung cognitive dimension is knowing what the value is. It's understanding what the value is. Ano gagawin mo para ito ay ma-manifest mo? You can manifest the value. That's cognitive dimension. It's just basically having it here in the mind. Pero ang affective dimension is a deeper understanding of the value. It feels like you have developed a certain attachment or affinity towards a certain value. Okay? Na may impact sa'yo ito. Okay? You have to feel something about that particular value para masabi mo na na-touch ng value na ito yung affective dimension. And then lastly, yung true test true acid test of value formation is the behavioral dimension. When you are able to act consistently with the value and you live by the value. Okay, you live by the value. Okay, for example, you value cleanliness or cleanliness. So, cleanliness, itunuro sa'yo, ano nga ba ang pagiging malinis? Paano maging malinis? So, all of these are stored in your mind. That's cognitive dimension. But when you develop the ability to be affected by certain situations like nakakita ka ng ng marumi, hindi nahugasang pinggan, tapos it affected you, naapektuhan ka. O kaya naman ay naapektuhan ka ng mga napanood mo sa mga slum community na hindi malinis yung tubig nila, hindi malinis yung bahay nila. So somehow naapektuhan ka sa mga bagay na ito. Okay? Yun yung affective dimension. At pag ikaw ay gumawa na ng mga bagay na consistent doon sa ideya ng pagiging malinis. Halimbawa, nakakita ka ng maduming lamesa, kahit hindi sabihin sa'yo, nilinisin mo. O kaya naman ikaw ay lumalabas ka. Ngayon, panahon ng pandemya, kailangan ng mask, kailangan ng alcohol. So lahat yun ino-observe mo, you are now consistently acting on that particular value. You are living now by the value. We call that the behavioral dimension. Okay, we call that the behavioral dimension. Halimbawa, sa ating klase, di ba, tinuro sa inyo na dapat naiintindihan mo yung mga estudyante. Bago mo sila i-judge, like sabihin mo, bobo, stupid, you have to understand first why they are like that. So you are now developing the value of understanding your students. So you know that's cognitive. Pero pag naapektuhan ka na, like, tama nga naman, dapat alam natin. So bago natin gawin ito, so merong na-touch sa puso mo, that's effective. Tapos pag naging teacher ka na at ginagawa mo yung mga bagay na yun, na inaaral mo muna yung background ng bata bago ka mag-judge sa kanya, bago mo siya evaluate, yun yung behavioral dimension. Okay, so those are the 3 dimensions of values. Now, so value formation can happen in many ways. So as teachers, paano nga ba natin mabubuo ang ating values? How can our values be formed? Okay, so there are many ways. Number 1, you have to be attentive. You have to be open and attentive in your value lessons. Pag may nagtuturo sa iyo kung anong tama at mali, makinig ka. Okay, makinig ka. Halimbawa, yung principal mo, tinuturuan kayo kung paano nga ba mag-navigate sa workplace. So you have to listen to them. Okay, but if you don't want to, then you can read. Okay, reading is one way for us to develop our values too, like reading biographies or inspirational books. Okay, have you read the Purpose-Driven Life of Ralph Lauren? So it could actually help us build our values towards us. Okay, kung anong mahalaga para sa atin. And also biographies. May mga matututunan ka sa mga buhay ng ibang tao. Like, for example, the likes of Charo Santos Poncio. Anong matututunan natin sa buhay niya? Albert Einstein. Or maybe sino pa bang mga personalidad na motivating yung kanilang mga stories. Okay? Also, as teachers, you can associate yourself with model teachers. Befriend the kind teachers. Okay? Befriend them. Avoid those people who are not helping you, or who will not in any way help you. Iwasan mo yung mga chismosa na mga colleagues. Okay, go away from them. It will not make you a better person. It's not being unfriendly, but because, it will not do good in your life. Okay, they will not be able to influence you to make good things. They will just influence you to make bad things. So if you know these people are not good already, then you have to keep yourself away from them, but not in a very unfriendly way. Okay? Yeah. So you have to associate yourself with good friends. Sabi nga nila, mas magandang konti yung kaibigan mo, pero totoo, tunay na kaibigan, at tinutulungan kang maging isang mas mabuting tao, kaysa sa napakarami mo namang kaibigan, pero hindi ka naman you are not becoming a better version of yourself. As the Desiderata would say, avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to your soul. Okay? Yun. Hindi natin maiiwasan sa isang organisasyon yan. Okay? Yung mga nagtuturo na dito, yung nagtatrabaho sa opisina, may mga tao tayo talagang ayaw natin at may mga tao talagang gusto natin. Okay? But we have to be very careful about that too. Okay? Kung yung gusto natin masama, hindi na maganda yun. Okay? So join community immersions to be exposed to people in various walks of life. Ito napakaganda nito. When you immerse yourself with the community. Okay, for example, in my experience now, I have a group of people who is researching a cultural research shop, and one of our respondents or one group of respondents are Malaweg. So we have to go to Rizal. And we chose to go to Zinundungan Valley. And it's a very remote place. Kailangan namin, ang sinakyan pa namin ng tractor para lang makarating doon sa Zinundungan Valley. And when we went there, when we were able to go there, I was able to learn to appreciate my life better than ever. Okay, to appreciate my life, my kind of living, because I realized that I was a very lucky person. That we are very lucky persons. We are able to eat thrice a day. We are able to live in a comfortable life. And there's no way that we could, be frustrated with our life because some others are not even given the opportunity to have what you have right now. Okay, so yun yung mga bagay na nagpamulat sa akin na napakaswerte ko pa rin despite the problems that I am experiencing. That I have no right to complain about my house, my food, because some people don't have anything in their table. Okay, so that is how we could develop also our values. Okay. Yeah. Now, talking about values, okay, value formation is actually a training of the intellect and the will. Okay, it's a training of the intellect and the will. By saying will, but muna tayo sa intellect, it distinguishes a value and presents it to the will as right or wrong value. Ang will naman, it is the act. Okay, it wills to act on the right value and wills to avoid wrong value presented by the intellect. But yun nga, ang hierarchy niyan, laging nauuna ang utak. Okay? Pagka ikaw ay nasa gitna ng isang sitwasyon na kailangan mong gumawa ng isang desisyon, unahin mo munang isipin kung ano nga ba itong desisyon na gagawin mo. You have to weigh the pros and the cons of the decision that you're going to make. And you can only do that kung ito ang paiiralin mo, intellect. At hindi ka agad-agad na na-action. Dapat isipin mo muna, tama ba itong ginagawa ko, mali ba itong ginagawa ko, bago mo i-put into action itong decision na ito. Okay? Sabi nga nila, okay, mas matimbang or the head is over your heart. Okay? The head is over your heart. So ito muna paganahin mo before your heart. Okay? So sabi nga ni St. Thomas Aquinas, sabi niya, the intellect proposes and the will disposes. Okay? The intellect proposes and the will disposes. So is it yung heart versus the brain? Okay, so babalikan mo ba yung ex mo ba pagkatapos yung magpa-change oil or hindi? And you were thought about the value of forgiveness, patatawarin mo ba siya? Babalikan mo ba siya? So sabi ng magulang mo, magpatawad ka. Sabi ng Diyos, magpatawad ka. So papatawarin mo ba siya o hindi? Or gano'n. Okay, so anong pairali mo? Yung puso mo o yung utak? Pero sabi nga, your intellect must be enlightened by what is true. And nothing is willed unless it is first known. So ang punto lang nito ay ito lagi ang dapat nating pinapairal. Okay? We weigh the consequence of our actions. All right. Let's skip this part. Let's talk about virtuous life. Okay? So as teachers, tayo, okay, we have to have a virtuous life. We have to have a virtuous life rather than having a vicious life. Anong pagkakaiba ng dalawa? Ang virtuous life, it strengthens you to live by the right values and live a life of abundance and joy. Pero ang vicious leads to perdition and misery. Okay? If you are able to watch the episodes by Tony Gonzaga in YouTube, yung Tony Talks, Yun, marami tayong matututunan doon. I encourage everybody to watch the vlog of Tony Gonzaga. I am not paid here, but I just learned a lot of things from the interviews of Tony Gonzaga with Rica Paralejo and Baron Geister. Okay, and Baron Geister. And yun nga sinasabi natin that, you know, everything changes. Every people change. Okay, no one can become stagnant. If you are willing to change, then you can change. And you can live a virtuous life. Ang vicious life kasi, ito yung malumuhong pamumuhay. Okay? You are succumbed into the desires and the worldly desires of man. Okay? Pera na lang ang iniisip mo. Yung mga desire mo na lang iniisip mo, pera, alahas, bisyo, drugs, sex, whatever that is, it will never do good in your life. It leads to perdition and misery. But if we live to the right values, we will have a life of abundance and joy. Okay? And abundance and joy. Okay? So wag nating hayaan na malamon tayo ng ating mga bisyo. Okay? Halimbawa, I was very curious. Like a month ago, I was hearing from my friends about online sabong and all. So I was very curious and I tried doing it. No, I tried doing online sabong because dito ka lang naman sa computer mo, nagkaano ka na, naglalaro ka na. At first nananalo ako, pero I realized na mas malaki yung loss ko kesa sa panalo ko. So until such point na na-realize ko hindi maganda. So we have to control ourselves. We have to pairanin lagi natin yung utak natin. That we have to weigh the consequences of our actions. Okay, so we have to never give way to a vice. Kung natikman mo na, okay na yon. Pero dapat kontrolin mo na yung sarili mo na i-withdraw yung sarili mo sa mga bagay na yun. Okay? Yeah. So as teachers, we have to learn that. Now, let us end our lesson with Max Scheller's hierarchy of values. Lalabas ito sa inyong midterm exam. Okay? Yung the lowest form and the highest form of values. So the lowest is pleasure values, and next to that is vital values. The next one is spiritual values, and the last one is values of the holy. Okay, so what we mean by pleasure values? When we talk about pleasure values, we give importance to anything that gives you pleasure or pain. Okay, yung sinabi ko nga kanina na mas pinapahalagahan mo yung pera, alahas, yung fame, yung prestige, yung power, yan ay mga pleasure values. And we don't want to live our life just by putting importance to our pleasure values. Okay, to our pleasure values. Oo, masarap. Masarap ng mga bagay na to, but it will not give you permanent happiness. Okay, it will not give you permanent happiness. Halimbawa, nagda-drugs ka, nagda-drugs ka, kaya umiinom ka ng alak, lagi-lagi, every night, ginagawa mo yan. Pero every night mo lang naman nararamdaman yung pleasure. For the rest of the day, hindi na, wala na, nakakalimutan mo na, di ba? Kinabukasan, ganun ka pa rin tao, malungkot ka pa rin tao, problemado ka pa rin tao, nagda-drugs ka na, uminom ka ng alak every night para makalimutan mo yung problema mo. Pero the next day after, problemado ka pa rin tao. You were not able to solve the problem. So you don't have to go with that. Let's upscale ourselves with vital values. Vital values naman, we talk about our health. We talk about our body. Okay, so we do things because we want to keep our body free from any condition that would harm us. Okay, so values pertaining to the well-being either of the individual or of the community. Okay, and higher than that is spiritual values. Okay, values of right and wrong, the values of pure knowledge. These are values independent on the whole sphere of the body and the environment, grasped in spiritual acts of preferring, loving, and hating. Okay, so those values that, you know, very close to the supreme being. Okay, if you live close to how Jesus have lived before, you are already on the spiritual values. And if you're willing to die for a certain cause, dun ka na papasok sa values of the holy. Okay, the likes of Mahatma Gandhi, and the other saints, the martyrs, they were able, they express their aims and goals by dying. Okay, yung mga heroes natin. yun yung papasok sa values of the holy. At hindi lahat ng tao nakakarating dyan sa part na yan. Okay? Dito tayo sa pleasure, vital, pwede rin sa spiritual. Pero sa values of the holy, if you're willing to die for your nation, for your family, or whatever that is, you are there. Okay? You are there. Okay? So that is Max Scheller's hierarchy of values. Okay? So take note of the things that I have discussed here in our lesson on values formation because those will be coming out in your examination and in your quiz tomorrow. Okay? So may quiz kayo